Here, the chapter goddess. I am a mom, author, blogger, freelancer, podcaster, producer, and overall creative. With this show, I really want to focus on creatives and bring their authentic self to life. How are they motivated to pursue their passions? What have been the struggles along the way? Does self-care play an important role in who they are today and how they connect with the creative flow? Bringing one's authentic self to the forefront is important in this world that we live in currently. Sharing your self-care, your tips, and how you stay on track for things without losing it completely is also important. Self-care is not talked about enough, and authenticity and self-care are what I like to highlight with my creatives, as well as getting to know them. So get ready for a fun and entertaining show. Hit the like button, subscribe if you haven't already, and let's get ready to meet this episode's guest. Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's show. I have a fantastic author to chat with today, guys, and I am really curious to see his thoughts and the work the way his mind works to put these stories together. But without further ado, let me go ahead and bring in today's guest and let him introduce himself. Hello.
Hello, it's so nice to meet you in the virtual environment here. And this really lets people get a chance to connect who might never meet in person. And it's a lot of fun. I had to think a lot in doing the questionnaire to give you some information. I am one of those people that just do not seem to have enough fingers to have a finger in each pot.
Oh, and, I feel that.
my full-time gig is I am a very full-time professor. I teach in the business school, and I'm also a licensed attorney, so I teach business law, business ethics, management. I teach some specialized business law courses, and I also have a part-time law and consulting practice focused on employment law and contracts. And then I'm a published author. I have 2 books out. I was a little excited earlier today. My first book, which has been out for 5.5 years now, we did not know when we released the first book, and I was lucky I did get a publishing contract, and what we didn't know is that the publisher keeps a whole lot of the money, because they put in a batch and they say, well, this is how much it cost us to make your book. So until we get all our money back, you don't get anything. So we just got a quarterly report, again, 5.5 years after publication, that said that we are in the black. And not only are we in the black, but we're past our retention, which means those cats should be sending us a check. And that book is called Decline of America, 100 Years of Leadership Failures. And it covers the period of Woodrow Wilson through Obama, because he had just finished his presidency when we released that book. And then 4 years later, we released Bad Deal for America.
Again.
And Bad Deal for America, we took a very different approach. The first book kind of looks at the American presidency, and then the second book looks at the members of Congress. It's actually a pitch for term limits. And since term limits have been very much in the news, we're actually in the process of doing a relaunch of that book, especially because we didn't have an audiobook ready. We've gotten a lot of requests for audiobook for both of the books. And so what we did is I actually hired 4 actors and they perform all of the parts of the politicians who we quote in the book. So the Bad Deal for America are direct quotes from 26 Republicans, 26 Democrats, plus a special section for Joe Biden, since he's currently president, but he was a member of Congress. Several people have asked us why Donald Trump is not in the book. And we said, because the only thing he's ever held is the presidency. So he didn't qualify to be in the book. But it's much more fun than listening to one author drone on reading each page of their book. And there are many fewer women than men in Congress at the present time. So we have one lady actor who is terrific and did a nice job of all the female parts. And then we had 2 male actors do all the rest of the parts, with one important exception. We had these 2 grumpy old men. We had Bernie Sanders and Joe Biden. And I have a friend who is a real character. He is a marketing expert. His name is Hyatt Ives, and he's a real character. And he has kind of a gravelly voice and a great sense of humor. And I approached him about that, and he approached it with great gusto. So he's been running around telling everybody, and he's very excited that the audiobook is now available so he can run around and show it to his friends. So it was very interesting. So I read the boring part. I read the introduction to the book, which is about how much money members of Congress have in hand. And then at the end of the book, I talk about a few multimillionaires who are in Congress, and talk about the source of the money and stuff like that. So I do the money parts, but the actors get to do the fun parts of saying these absolutely either offensive or stupid things that members of Congress have said. And of course, we looked for, particularly stupid and dumb statements. Let's be clear about this. We didn't look for them sounding like Rhodes Scholars or anything.
Nice. So how long did it take to put the actual books together? Because that's a lot of information to gather up.
The lead time period for the first book was about 5 years. And I think I had mentioned to you is that I think all the time. I kind of dream up stuff, and I come up with all these different projects, and I've gotten to the point where I've realized that, I'll be thinking the next week and I'll be like, well, I had that great idea last week. Where the heck is it? So I've now gotten in the habit of setting up subdirectories on my computer, and
smart.
for projects that I'd like to do. And so the book on the presidency was triggered by an opportunity I had over 20 years ago now. I was bluntly, I was a single guy. I was dating a woman who had a senior staff position for a congressman, a high-level congressman in Washington. I got to go to his inauguration in the mid-1990s, and then we moved to D.C. Since she changed from being a local staffer to being in the Washington staff. And for a whole year, I got to be the infamous fly on the wall, and to see, I actually hung out with lobbyists and got to meet people and that you wouldn't meet in your normal day-to-day life. So that kind of provided the inspiration, you might say. And so that was kind of the trigger, but it takes time to put things together and to have resources. And so by being a professor, which I became after that time, I have students who are looking for money, part-time jobs, and they helped a lot in those. Some of the lead researcher on that first book had already finished college, but she was between jobs and was looking for things. And then we work with several other very, very fine students or graduates. And but we started in earnest around 2013, 2014. And then it wasn't a question of the concept of the book, but to make sure all of the details were ready. So the book was ready roughly in about 4 years, and that's when I got the publishing contract. And I thought, oh my gosh, my first book, and I've got a publishing contract. This is so exciting. And what happened was is that they came back to me months after I signed the contract and said the book's too long. And I'm like, you signed this contract with me. What do you mean the book's too long? And they were like,
Yeah.
well, it's a 500-page book and we want it to be 400 pages. And that's after all of this work, that's
Yeah.
a gigantic cut. So we eventually compromised at about 450 pages or so. And it took quite a bit of editing over the summer of 2017 to get the book ready to release. And we had picked in the spring of 2017 that it would be released on President's Day of 2018. And then the second book, Bad Deal, we released on President's Day of 2022. And like I said, we've had the audiobook ready to go for several months. But another thing that you don't know when you're doing your first book or your first audiobook is there's an awful lot involved in the process. So we had the recordings with a professional recording studio here in Houston, Texas, but it took a while to get the recordings transitioned. And then we were all ready to load the book. Amazon is publishing the book, so they're handling the audiobook also. And they have a format, and we had not cut the book's audio pieces into the same format that Amazon's contractor, and it's not even directly Amazon, it's a contract site. And so we had to go back to the studio. I did. None of the actors had to. They were fine.
Yeah.
But I had to go back and record things like 2 words, like a audio recording of the word "thank you" and "thank you for joining us," and just silly stuff that we didn't think had to be in a separate audio file. So it was a pretty interesting process. And but anyway, we're moving on. And so, as I think I mentioned to you, I am working on a new book, which is my first book that is not on political management.
Mhm.
And in fact, it's a retro book. The genre is called a coming of age book. It's fiction based on fact that is set in 1969 to 1973. And from the entertainment industry. And as I tell people, that was the period right after Woodstock of sex, drugs, and rock and roll.
Wow. That's going to be interesting. So
I'm
with
trying.
all of your writing and stuff, how do you manage like getting that into your schedule? Because you've got a full plate of stuff going on.
I have to be really efficient. I'm probably one of the more time-possessed people that you know, and I have to be talked into taking time off or to travel, which I do. But it's kind of like, gee, I really want to jump on this and get this chapter done and things like that. So part of it is in my personal existence. One of the things is Houston is famous for long commutes. We have traffic jams that start at about 6 o'clock in the morning and go until about 9 o'clock in the morning. And then evening rush hour is like 4 p.m. to 7 or 7:30 these days. I live real near the university and really near my personal office. I have 2 offices, one at the university and one in the historic Houston Heights. And so I am not spending hours in my car. That helps a lot. And I have no pets and no kids at home and things that other people have to deal with. And so I can put that time to good use. I do work out. I do like to play tennis. Sadly, one activity that I've given up temporarily is that I became a pretty adept Argentine tango dancer, and
Ooh.
that stopped abruptly the second weekend in uh, March of 2020 when
Uh,
the world shut down. And one of the distinctions is, even though ballroom dancing, which is what I started with, is fairly close, you're fairly close to your partner. In Argentine tango, if you've seen any of it done like on Dancing with the Stars, is you are actually face to face with your partner, you're cheek to cheek actually. And
mm,
because of that, it came back much slower than other even dancing. And so I have my wonderful coach. I was fortunate to find a lady who was just, in my opinion, the best tango instructor anywhere. And she decided at age 75 not to return to tango instruction. I can't understand why, but so I'm still looking for another group to hang out with, and so hopefully get to do that for a couple hours a week or something in the future. But I'm also I have stuff stacked up, so I
mm.
have a one act play that's been in a couple contests. It hasn't placed yet, but it is actually based on characters from the book that I'm working on, which is called a Chief Education. So the place, the one act play kind of supports the book. And then completely separate from all that, I have written a musical, which
Ooh.
is actually a review. And the musical review is called Novel T. It's the word novel dash T. And it, I wrote the text of it. I found a creative person to do a theme song, and then it's a collection of 30 novelty songs from the 50s through the 70s, and it's designed to be a fun, family oriented thing. You can sing along and just enjoy having an evening of music and theater. And the problem I ran into is, since I don't write music, I had to find a source to do uh, it's called a musical score.
Mm.
So it took a while to find somebody who could do the score, and then they took almost a year to get the score to me because they had to score each of the 30 songs. And so once we got that in, I had to get better organized and all that. So we are just now at the stage where I will be calling on local theaters to say, hey, this is Dr. Dave, and I've got this really cool musical. And wouldn't you like to produce it at your theater and be the premiere of this musical? So that's again something new for me. I mean, I'm not known to the theater industry. I don't have any plays that have been performed on the big stage or anything. But I don't have any particular fear of doing things. I mean, in
Mhm.
terms of personally, like sometimes people think, do you have a fear of speaking? Do you have fear of doing this? Do you have fear of failure? No, I just get out there and do it, and I just, something inside me, imbued by my mom and dad, I guess, goes back a long way. It's just let's go do it.
Yeah, that confidence is a good thing. And that's awesome that you've made a musical and you've created this nonfiction. How did you feel writing that musical compared to how you felt writing all of the nonfiction work? Was there a different kind of emotion involved in that?
Yeah, it's a little more relaxing because when I was working on the two nonfiction books, it's like, gosh, I really want to make sure that this citation is correct and that we have the birth year of each of the
Mhm.
presidents correct. And on the quotations in Bad Deal, we wanted to make sure they were absolutely correct and made sense. Whereas this was like, well, what would be fun? What would be cool for the actors and actresses, the singers really, to say in between the songs? Because it's really not a lot of text, but I
Mhm.
wanted to have a text that put it in context in terms of what years these songs were popular, or why would anyone have heard about them, and things like that. So there was a bit of that. We also had to do a lot of research because to perform music, you must have the permission of the composer. It's not whoever sang it on the radio, it's actually the production company behind it. And so we did a lot of just something you don't anticipate. But to give you an idea of lead times, as I mentioned, I got inspired to do the leadership book. The presidential leadership book was, we had a situation where I dreamed up the concept of novelty in the early 2000s. And so it was at least 10 years before, and I had set up a subdirectory on my computer where before I went back to it and got the other two books out and then went back. Actually, I had novelty rolling at the same time I was working on Bad Deal for America. And so what happened was is that after I got the Bad Deal out or off my desk, so to speak, then I turned to putting more time in, and it was relaxing to work on that because it's so very different, and it was kind of nostalgic for me because I'd had it in the works for so long.
Oh, yes. So did you go back and listen to some of the songs too as you were writing that?
All of the songs are available on YouTube, which is amazing. Sometimes, you go back to stuff that's 50, 70 years ago, and boom, it's easier today because they're available. So in helping the people that work with me on that, I actually would give them the YouTube link, or if it's on some other site, the linkage, so that they could listen to the song and all that. Also, some of the lyrics were modified. So one of the great examples, song that you may have heard, is a group named Herman's Hermits had a big hit. Peter Noon, who was like a 13 or 14-year-old when they had these massive hits, and he was on the Ed Sullivan Show and all that. He's still performing, by the way. And somebody here in Houston actually said to me, by the way, I know Peter Noon, I've met him, and he's a great guy. So it was kind of interesting. But imagine being 13 or 14 and being, a #1 performer in the world. And what we found out, though, with regard to Henry VIII, the song is actually a drinking song from around 1920 or so. And so the song's actually in the public domain. So we don't, it's one of the few songs that we found. There's 2 songs in the musical review that were popularized by people in the 60s and 70s, but are not subject to royalties because they are in the public domain. And but anyway, it's interesting because the words that Herman's Hermit sang are not exactly the same as the original words. So we're actually going to use the original words that we were able to locate. So so it fits with doing the research and finding things out. Most of the songs are comical or just fun. Like the longest title in there is "She Wore a Teeny Weeny Polka Dot Bikini."
Yes.
And then she couldn't come out of the water because she lost her top. And that's the plot of the song. You tell I'm a very content-oriented guy. And I actually have in the notes, in the production notes in the script, that no nudity. Got that right in there because we promoting this as a very family-friendly deal. So I want to put a little disclaimer in there. So that was kind of a fun little piece there. But with regard to Henry VIII, remember, some of the people working with us are young enough that they've never heard these things. So that's where it helps to have a recording that can be located, so people can kind of focus in.
Wow, that's crazy that they haven't heard some of those songs. I feel like I kind of grew up with them because that's something that was played a lot. And then I worked I waited tables for a long time during college and stuff. And they played like the oldies, like the original oldies, not the new oldies. Because that's just not a thing in my brain because I don't want to feel that old yet. But like those songs are kind of like a part of my childhood. So that makes me feel nostalgic too. Just like knowing you're putting that together to put out there.
Well, we'll have to send you a list of the songs so that you can take a look at the list and see if how many of you will do kind of a trivia day there, and you can go through the list of the songs and see how many of them that you can, that when you see the title, it'll be like, oh yeah, I remember that. It goes this way.
Yes.
And
Oh,
I don't sing anything, by the way.
yeah.
Don't tell them, don't tell them. I've been ordered not to sing, as a matter of fact.
Oh man, no, you did. I'm sure you had to try at least once, right?
Yeah. Well, I can kind of give people the lyrics, but I have a nice baritone, but it doesn't really carry very well. I've been told I'm tone deaf, so I have to be careful about not damaging the songs.
Oh, that's too funny. So, with all of these books out there, you said you're working on something new. What kind of timeline are you looking at with your next project?
Well, I would love to be able to say it'll be out in second quarter 2024, but that's just not realistic. I am teaching a very heavy course schedule, and we're reformatting some courses, changing textbooks, doing some heavy stuff over the semester break, between the fall and the spring semester. So where this might be a time where I could really catch up and produce, say, a quarter of the book.
Mhm.
Unfortunately, I'm probably going to spend much of that time getting ready to teach next semester. Hopefully, if I can do a good job at that, get things rolling pretty well, maybe I'll have an easy, it'll go smoothly and I'll be able to crank it out. So starting sometime this past summer, I've written about 35,000 words. And so, which unfortunately is less than a quarter of the book. So
Yeah.
it's shaping up to be a fairly long book, but it tracks a character named Aaron who is from the wrong side of the tracks,
Hmm.
gets a scholarship to an Ivy League college, and gets just dropped into Philadelphia, and has no background, no concept of what it's like to be at college, what it's like to live in a dorm, what it's like to somehow pay the bills, because some of the things that Aaron realizes is it's expensive to be in Philadelphia compared to other places. It's a big city. And you get a full scholarship that covers tuition and fees. It doesn't cover room and board. And so not only does Aaron have to come up with, borrow federal money, federal loan program, which many college students do today, but there was an assignment to do a work study job, and his first work study job blew up. He starts as a pre-med and then discovers that he doesn't like working with sick people.
Man.
So kind of put the trick in that, but he falls into the entertainment industry and starts with the college newspaper, and then goes to the college radio station, and then that catches on, and he ends up doing a weekly 1 hour entertainment show on the public radio station of the university, and PBS in Philadelphia, WHYY,
Mhm.
picks up the show,
Mhm.
and he's soon going to luncheons with pretty famous people of the time. One is the comedy group Stiller and Mara. In fact, Jerry Stiller just passed away recently, and Mara
Mhm.
passed away 4 or 5 years earlier. And Helen Hayes, very famous actress, Carol Channing, uh, the the two singing groups, the Temptations and the Supremes, rock promoter Bill Graham, when he closed the Fillmores, Fillmore East and Fillmore West, he did a national tour to promote a triple album called the Fillmore, or the end of the Fillmore. And I actually had lunch with him while he was out promoting the album, and lots of interesting things happened. And so it was a combination. And then that morphed into doing the media coverage, morphed into representing fine artists and rock and folk singers.
Wow.
So that's the plot of the book. And like I said, we're rolling along on that. And part of the reason I decided to put the book together is I told people, I would give people little vignettes from the book, and they'd be like, this is just cool stuff. How did this happen? What did you do? And so that's why I decided to begin crafting a book about it. And we'll find out once it's actually on the paper if anybody actually wants to read it. See, and like I said, I don't worry about that. I'm sure other authors you talk to say you've got to write the book for yourself, and
It's true.
hopefully
Yeah.
other people like what you're doing.
Yeah.
But you've got to make it happen. One of the things that people have found interesting is the research behind doing a fiction based on fact book, because there were many specific incidents and time frames in there. I have been able to reconstruct records because so much stuff is online today, and historical records of different arts organizations, different theaters, different performers. Wikipedia has a page on almost everybody that I can think of.
Yeah.
You can kind of reconstruct things, and it gives you that texture that you would not have from pure fiction.
That's true. And it's fun to have that kind of work out there. It's for some, it's a better way to kind of like take in that information and it stick, you know?
Yes. So we're working at it, and I'm redoing the outline right now. And obviously, anytime you do work like this, anything of length, you do an outline. But I found that the outline kind of let me down. I got to this point in the outline, I kept having to go into the original research. And so what the phase I'm in right now is I'm going back to the outline and adding a lot more detail to the outline so that I don't have to keep referring back to other pieces. I can just go to the outline and say, okay, here are all the dates and times and things that we're trying to show in this section of the book. And upcoming is actually the one-act play that I wrote with the characters Aaron and his neighbor. At one point in this story is a woman named Dottie. And Dottie is a middle-aged woman. She married an older man. He had sons who were close to her age at the time they married, say 15 or 20 years earlier. And the sons were so mean to her that she got divorced from her husband, but he was still supporting her in this low rent apartment. Of course, Aaron, being a scholarship student, is living in a low rent apartment next door.
Yeah.
And so he meets her. And shortly after he meets her, he said she refers to her ex husband as Old Faithful because he comes and spends every Saturday night with her.
Oh.
And it's just very interesting. But she said she calls herself Crazy Dottie, and so the play is called Crazy Dottie. We think that might be a cause for some theaters not to want to produce it, but if you see it in context, she actually says, I'm referred to as Crazy Dottie, and that's okay with me. She actually, says that. But it was very interesting because she goes through a lot of changes during the 1 year that they're neighbors, and Aaron has an impact on her because Old Faithful has the means to provide better for her. And it's not the nicest place to live, and it's not the safest neighborhood. And by the end of that segment of the book, she is able to get Old Faithful to get her a nicer apartment in a nicer neighborhood. And so that's a little piece. But I had pulled that piece out before. Obviously, that part of the book's not written, but I had written that one-act play 10 years ago.
Nice.
So I'm coming back, and now I'm looping in pieces. And one of the things we're doing, because it wasn't picked up in these different one-act play contests, it's been in several, is we're looking at producing it privately for maybe a 4 or 5 segment serial piece on YouTube, which may again support the book or support the play. So, we're exploring different avenues for that, which again are available today, but weren't available in earlier times.
Yeah, that's going to be a fun thing, though. Well, David, we have reached the end of our show, so go ahead and tell our listeners and viewers where they can find you and snag copies of your work.
I'm very happy to do that. Both of my books are up on Amazon, and on the screen here is my last name. And if you put David Schein, author, up there, the Amazon will pop up there. I'm also in Wikipedia, and I have my own website. It's World Wide Web, ClaremontManagementGroup.com, and that's a catch-all site. So it has my consulting practice, but it also has books and different webcasts. I do several different webcasts.
Nice. And you guys watching, the links to his books, you can find them in the description. And I do believe there's a link to your website there as well. Once again, David, thank you so much for coming on the show. And you guys watching, hit the like button, subscribe if you haven't, and remember to stay creative. I hope you enjoyed the show. Don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe to get future notifications when shows come out. Also, be sure to check out my website. I have a blog featuring this creative with some other fun and interesting questions. You can also subscribe to my newsletter there to stay up to date with all things the chapter goddess and Madilynn Dale. Once again, thanks for watching and have a great rest of the day.